September 2007. A man tells police he's just found his boyfriend battered to death in a hotel room. Glenn Rycroft tells officers a rent boy is to blame for the killing of Gareth MacDonald. But Rycroft's lies are hiding a dark taboo. Rycroft is in fact a serial con man.
The money that he was conning out of people was for nothing more than a high lifestyle that Glenn wanted.
And now, after months of conning his boyfriend, Rycroft has turned from conman to murderer.
You just feel as though it's not happening. Someone's going to come along and say, you know, it's not real. And you think like that for a long time.
Britain's Darkest Taboos reveals the shocking true stories behind the most horrific acts of familial crime, including murder.
He stood up and licked the blood off the knife and he spat down her body.
Torture.
People call him an animal, but he's not an animal. An animal wouldn't do that to another animal.
And abuse.
I probably should have died, and I tell you what, I wish I had.
Gareth MacDonald is born on the 22nd of February 1977 in the tiny, isolated Welsh village of Ruel Mostyn. His parents are Sue and Charlie MacDonald.
He was popular in school, primary school and high school.
He was quite mischievous, but he was a very loving lad as well.
He had a nickname, I think it was Chipmunk, because he had quite chubby cheeks.
Gareth has 3 brothers, and from an early age he seems much quieter, developing different hobbies and interests.
His favourite toy was Kermit the Frog, and he was, even from an early age, collecting things and keeping things. He liked Fraggle Rock and the Doozers, and he'd collect them all. And he played with dolls quite a lot that way when he was younger, and he played a lot with girls' toys as well, and he enjoyed them.
As he grows up, Gareth becomes very popular in and around the tiny village, working in the local pub.
Everybody spoke highly of Gareth. He had a lot of friends.
He liked his music, he liked going to shows, he liked going out.
Definitely had quite a few girlfriends. And of course, with him working in the pub, he obviously met a lot of people there.
In 1997, Gareth meets a young woman called Alice.
They met where he worked, and you know, they set up a relationship together, and she became one of the family.
The couple eventually buy a house in the centre of the village.
He wanted his own house, which he did. He bought the bungalow. Him and Alice bought it together. And it was a lovely bungalow, and they did a lot of work on it.
And then on June the 10th, they have their first child together.
I was made up and couldn't wait to get out and text everybody and tell them of the new arrival. You know, he was so excited. Gareth loved his children. He'd do anything for them.
To his friends and family, Gareth is a perfect partner, making an honest living for himself and his family. But on the inside, he's in turmoil. He thinks he may in fact be gay and is struggling to come to terms with his sexuality. But how hard would it be for Gareth to hide these true feelings and live a lie? Emma Kenny is a psychologist who deals with matters like this in her clinics.
A sexual preference is a sexual preference. If you are a gay man, your urges are going to be sexually towards other men. So potentially tempering them or acting like they don't exist becomes ultimately an impossible situation to deal with. Of course we are sexual creatures, and of course our preferences are going to be the thing that we chase.
While Gareth is struggling with his true feelings, there is another man leading a double life. 60 miles away in Salford, Manchester. That man is Glenn Rycroft. He works as an air steward for British Airways. Though Rycroft's lies hide a much more sinister and disturbing secret. Behind the smart uniform, Rycroft is a callous conman, and colleague Debbie Henley would find herself right at the heart of his deceit.
Glenn had forged a letterhead from British Airways saying that British Airways were offering employees and friends and family the opportunity to invest in British Airways. Whatever they invested, they would get 3 times back within 6 months.
Rycroft begins his scam in September 2000, and over the next year embarks on a monumental con.
Glenn went around the local community offering this investment to whoever he could. They didn't have a lot of money themselves, they were vulnerable. They were trying to get more money from the little money they had in order to put that money back into communities. It wasn't for selfish reasons that they were doing it.
And Rycroft knows exactly the kind of person to target.
People remortgaged the house for him. Well, one lady didn't even know she didn't remortgage the house. She'd given him the deeds, thinking that he was putting them in a safe place. And he then went on and unfortunately remortgaged the house and left this poor lady who thought that she'd settled her mortgage with debt around her neck again. He's got no conscience whatsoever.
Laura Richards is a criminal behavioural analyst, working with police forces all over the country. She's been to the crime scene and has been looking into Rycroft's cons to explore what kind of person he is.
This man is clearly a con man, and he looks to exploit people and opportunities, so he would always try and prey on and exploit vulnerable people. He's clearly got no regard for anybody else other than himself. The fact that he takes people's life savings, the very little money that they may have, shows that he's sociopathic. He really genuinely doesn't care about anyone other than himself, other than Rycroft.
Rycroft is getting away with his cons. He's making money and enjoying the lifestyle it brings.
He was going on holiday in Barbados, running around in soft-top cars. He lived the high life with other people's money.
He likes to look like a guy who has. And the problem is with that it takes an upkeep. You have to keep finding money so that you can keep living the lie that you're presenting to the rest of the world.
And that is exactly what Rycroft wants to do. He decides to take his con up a level and sets in motion an evil and callous lie that would prey on those people who are closest to him.
There's a lot of people haven't got a lot of money in this area, but they would give you their last penny. And they did do that to Glenn. They gave him their last penny.
He's a man without boundaries, and a man without boundaries is an incredibly dangerous man.
2001, and in the Welsh village of Rhyl Mostyn, Gareth MacDonald is settling into a relationship with his girlfriend and new baby.
We were so excited. Gareth loved his children. He'd do anything for them.
But behind the family facade, Gareth is hiding a secret: the fact he is gay. And the tight-knit community where he lives is making it hard to come out.
Everybody has identified with Gareth up until this point as a family man who is heterosexual. So to change that opinion and to take that next step to being authentic with yourself is something that would challenge most people.
At the same time that Gareth is hiding his secret, there is another man leading a double life. But whereas Gareth is working hard, trying to provide and protect his family, Glenn Rycroft is a devious and callous conman who only thinks of himself. Air Steward Rycroft has conned vulnerable people in his community out of thousands with a fake investment scheme, and now he's taking his con to a more callous level. He tells everyone he's dying of cancer and needs cash for life-saving treatment. Debbie Henley is asked to help.
I just got a phone call and just said, Debs, we know you do a lot of work at the Willows for charity. We've got a chap who's unfortunately got cancer, he's got a brain tumour, and in actual fact he is a cabin crew member of British Airways, and I wondered if you'd be able to come and host the charity event for us. All I wanted to do was just raise as much cash and awareness for his illness as we could.
However, Rycroft is elusive, failing to turn up to meetings time after time.
I just put it down to him being ill. At the time, people were telling me that he was going through horrendous chemo treatments. He was travelling all over the world trying to find revolutionary treatments wherever they were and whatever they were in order to prolong his life. I was speaking to one person who said that he'd been away, I think it was to the Caribbean, for some treatment and had come back and he'd had shaved marks on his head. The treatment that he'd had caused this hair loss on his head.
But in reality, Rycroft isn't sick at all. He's actually shaving his own head to dupe everyone into believing he's having cancer treatment. As the weeks pass, the charity event gathers momentum. Hundreds of people are expected, and the event should raise thousands. But Debbie is having doubts. Rycroft is being extremely secretive and elusive.
Nothing was fitting right, and it was horrible to sit there and think, well, am I that evil-minded that I think that perhaps this isn't so? And the last straw was when I was told that British Airways had a private jet on standby to take Glenn anywhere in the world for life-saving treatment should he need it. I mean, our CEO didn't even have the luxury of that at the time. So the next day, I called up British Airways and apparently Glenn's employment with British Airways had been terminated quite some time before I'd even been asked to do the charity function.
Debbie now firmly believes Rycroft is lying about the cancer. She decides to report him to the police.
I phoned up the police and I said to the police, listen, I really got my suspicions that there's something just not right. Of course, with any charity function, you have to have a letter of authority from your medical officers at the hospital that you're at. Glenn had one of these. The police straight away got in touch with the hospital, and unfortunately, very sadly, it was a forged letter.
Rycroft's lies are catching up with him. But in a few hours' time, Debbie has to front the charity event.
I just felt absolutely sick because I then knew that I had to go and expose all of this to all these people. And don't forget, a lot of these people knew Glenn personally, and they were doing it because, you know, they knew him as a little boy growing up. They had, you know, an affiliation for Glenn. So when I announced it, there was this silent hush went across the room.
Rycroft is arrested and charged with 25 counts of deception in connection with the investment and CancerCon.
From what I know, they found British Airways uniform in his house. They found blood capsules that he'd been using. He was going out of an evening with friends and cracking the blood capsules in his ears, pretending that he was having seizures, and lots of books on cancer.
On the 4th of December 2003, Rycroft is sentenced to 4 years in prison for scamming friends and relatives out of £200,000 through the fake investment scheme and the CancerCon.
The court heard Rycroft was leading an extravagant lifestyle, 8 holidays in 9 months. He'd managed to con £200,000 out of family and friends, some of whom were in court today.
The effects of Glenn's callous acts will impact on us for a long time to come. Glenn systematically targeted friends and family who were more than willing to help and support a friend in need. For our loyalty and trust, we were rewarded with betrayal and a lot of heartache.
There's a lot of people haven't got a lot of money in this area, but they would give you their last penny. And they did do that to Glenn. They gave him their last penny.
The type of human being who is willing to lie and harm the people who are very much there to support and love him is the kind of character who will do whatever it takes to get what he wants. And Rycroft fits this form. He is somebody who will literally do whatever it takes to have a life that he desires.
That's an illness in itself, isn't it? I mean, what Glenn had, he was ill, but it wasn't with cancer, it was greed.
While Rycroft begins his jail sentence 60 miles away in the tiny Welsh village of Rhyl Mostyn, Gareth MacDonald continues to live with his secret, the fact he's gay, and he's struggling to admit his true feelings. In 2006, he gets married, but is now spending more time away from the family home.
I just look at if they're happy together and that's what they want, it's their choice. And I think with Gareth and how he enjoyed going out and clubbing, I think Ailís knew him. She'd been with him for long enough to understand what he was like. You know, they'd had that time together, not rushed into it. They'd got 2 children, they'd been together for a number of years.
They'd had their ups and downs like everybody else, but I wouldn't say they'd had any major fallouts, you know, not that I was aware of.
But Gareth isn't just going out. At home, he's secretly searching gay websites to find other men to chat to.
As Gareth begins to come to terms with his sexuality, he starts using the internet as a way of contacting other gay men, so using gay chat rooms. And it makes sense because this is something you can do secretly at home. It's not impacting directly on your family, but it is allowing you to meet some of your sexual needs. And Gareth ultimately starts to use this as a coping strategy for him to come to terms with his sexuality.
Gareth's wife is starting to get suspicious of her new husband.
Ailís did ring me up crying and said that she thought Gareth was seeing somebody else and he was on the internet a lot, and she'd found condoms. But again, Gareth wouldn't say anything, and obviously, that was the start of when things were breaking down.
I was aware that there was a little bit more friction between them, but I think I put it down to the fact that it's you know, long hours working and, you know, very little free time for the two of them.
But just a few months later, Gareth reveals his secret, telling his family that he's gay and can no longer live a lie. Though shocked, Sue and Charlie are determined this won't affect their close relationship with Gareth.
Although Gareth was gay and came out and then said he was gay, but everybody knew him, just still accepted him. His friends, all of them. Not one of them, I don't think, said, well, I don't want nothing to do with you.
Gareth finally leaves his wife.
They went through a bad time, and I think as all couples would when you break up. You're concerned and the effects it would have on the children, but they seemed happy. Gareth had moved on and, you know, had just accepted it. Things sorted out and he separated with Ailís, and he seemed better in himself, and Ailís and him seemed to get on better then.
At the same time Gareth's marriage ends, Rycroft has already been released from prison after serving half his sentence.
Someone from Manchester base came up to me with a newspaper and plonked it in front of me and said, have you read that? And I read that he'd got out, and I thought, oh no, you know, is he going to come after me? You know, is he going to want revenge on me for shopping him? I didn't know what was going to happen.
But Rycroft isn't looking for Debbie. He wants a new victim and begins trawling chat rooms to find one.
We have Rycroft going online, ultimately looking for new connections, but at the same time, Gareth is online, seeking out becoming a more authentic gay man, ideally looking for a relationship. And the reality is that Gareth is naive, and Rycroft would sniff out that vulnerability immediately. For Rycroft, a vulnerable male, ideally a naive vulnerable male, makes him the perfect victim, the perfect person to prey on, to ensure that he can continue to live the lifestyle that he wishes to.
Gareth and Rycroft begin a relationship, and within a couple of months, Gareth takes Rycroft home to meet his parents. Sue and Charlie make a huge effort to ensure Rycroft is welcomed, so that Gareth feels comfortable bringing his new boyfriend home.
He just came over that he was a caring person, and, you know, nothing was too much trouble. He was a charmer.
It seemed as though, you know, he was smartly dressed. He came in a new car. And, you know, he was very well spoken. You know, he was a well-to-do sort of young lad.
He gave the impression that he was well off, and he was buying him presents and arranging to go to London for New Year, and Gareth had never done anything like that before, and arranging to go away to places and to do things and keep busy.
He told me he was been with the airline business and he was quite wealthy and this, that and the other.
But it seems that Rycroft hasn't learnt his lesson from his time in jail. He's still spinning a web of lies, using his tried and tested tale of working for an airline.
When Gareth's family meet Rycroft, they too are lulled into a false sense of security. This guy's charming and he appears to be somebody that they can relate to and that their son is falling in love with. What we have to understand is that Gareth's family want to show a united front of support to him. They want to let him know that his sexuality has not changed the relationship they have with him. And so essentially, we have Rycroft yet again having the opportunity to prey on all of those feelings. And that's exactly what he does.
Rycroft has the MacDonald family just where he wants them. Gareth is smitten, and his parents are intent on standing by their son and supporting his new relationship. It's time for Rycroft to launch his next scam.
He really doesn't learn from consequences. He has played these cards before and been found out for them, but he really doesn't care. As far as he's concerned, it's worth giving it a go again.
He was questioning me and Sue, you know, about holidays. They'd started this holiday so-called company up. And then he says, oh, I'll get you a holiday cheap because of all his discounts, and he would pass them on to us and all the rest of it.
Rycroft tells the family his airline connections means he can offer them a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but they will have to fork out thousands for the privilege.
He was talking about holiday of a lifetime, and you know, he was on about it. He wanted deposits, and we were going along with it, you know, and I gave him some money, quite a bit of money, as the deposits.
Sue and Charlie are so keen to keep Gareth close. They let the couple move into their old family home. But it wouldn't take long for Gareth's parents to begin to get suspicious of Rycroft's claims to be wealthy.
I had several little inklings that things weren't 100%. They were paying us a token rent. I think it was something like £100 a month. It was, you know, it wasn't rent really. It was a goodwill gesture, if you like. But they started saying, oh, we can't do this. We can't pay the rent. We'll pay you next week. And at first it was, yeah, it's not a problem, don't worry. And he had a new Renault Megane, which he told us it was his. And then it disappeared. So it was little things like that started the ball rolling.
We never really saw Gareth on his own much. So it was hard to speak to him because we were never really on our own with him. Rycroft was usually always around.
Rycroft's mask is slipping, and he's already conned thousands of pounds out of Gareth's family. But he's not just scamming Sue and Charlie, but Gareth too. And now, yet again, he's getting greedy.
Gareth phoned me up and asked me, could he borrow some money? Oh, he said, I want to borrow quite a bit of money. So I said, well, how much do you need? So he said, I need £800. So I said, why do you need £800 all of a sudden? So he said, there's money going out of my bank, Dad, he said, and he said, I've got a good idea who it is.
The fact that Gareth's father helps his son out financially just demonstrates how close they are. Firstly, that Gareth can ask him for help, and secondly, that his father can offer it.
Gareth's family would continue to support their son, but it wouldn't take long for Gareth to finally realise he's been conned. And when challenged, Rycroft would go to extreme lengths to avoid being sent back to jail.
Gareth wasn't streetwise, he was too trusting, and as a parent, that's where you think maybe I failed him.
In 2007, Gareth MacDonald is being duped by a serial conman. Gareth has left his wife for Glenn Rycroft, but Rycroft has a secret. He's just been released from prison after pretending to have cancer and conning his family and friends out of thousands.
I mean, what Glenn had, he was ill, but it wasn't with cancer, it was greed.
And now Rycroft has his claws into a new victim. He's bleeding Gareth's account dry. September 2007. 6 months after the relationship begins, Gareth's parents have real concerns about the man they've accepted into their home.
We were due to go to Gran Canaria and we'd paid the money and he wasn't paying the rent. Charlie had said, if we don't have this holiday, he was going to ask Rycroft to leave because he said something's not right.
He'd had the money for the holiday and we're talking a substantial amount of money, you know. We're looking at about 5,000 now. And I'd said to Sue, I said, I know it's Gareth at the end of the day, but I said, that's it. There's no more money going out of this house.
This would have been so difficult because Gareth's parents are ultimately supportive and they want to be there for their son. But the reality is they're realising that Rycroft is bad news and that by supporting Gareth, essentially by proxy, they're supporting Rycroft, and they don't want to do that anymore.
This guy portrayed that, everything was rosy, and of course you think to yourself, this fella's taking us for a ride.
The family starts to ask more questions. The net is closing in on Rycroft.
He started to, shy away a little. He was either in Manchester in his mum's, or he was visiting his auntie, or, he was not with Gareth as often as he was in the past. But I think he knew that we were starting to suspect things about him.
Sue and Charlie tell Gareth about their concerns, and he finally realises Rycroft has been stealing from him and conning his parents. Gareth confronts Rycroft. He tells him he plans to report him to the police and demands he pays back the money.
Now this is a real turning point for Rycroft because he's realising that his web of lies is being uncovered, and that means he needs to take immediate action to rectify this situation. And clearly for Gareth, this would have been a simple question of unearthing the truth. But for Rycroft, this essentially signs Gareth's death warrant. He has no option now but to remove the problem, and that is what Gareth has become, which results in absolutely tragic circumstances for Gareth.
Rycroft is on probation. One false move and he'll be back in jail. That's the last thing he wants. So Rycroft begins a deadly plot to stop Gareth going to the police. He searches the internet for tips on how to get away with murder.
Well, one thing Glenn Rycroft is brilliant at is research. I will say that, because he researched the cancer and then he researched how to murder somebody, and he certainly carried through everything that he said he was going to do.
Shockingly, from Rycroft's internet search history, he's trying to find out how many blows to the head it takes to kill somebody, how to break somebody's neck.
Rycroft wants to commit the perfect murder. He thinks he knows how to kill. Now he has to decide where to do it. On September the 14th, 2007, Rycroft lures Gareth to a hotel on the M4. He tells Gareth he wants to repay some of the stolen cash. Laura Richards has come to the area to try to understand why.
The fact that we're 200 miles away from the area that they lived in, and to get him somewhere more isolated and remote, and it may have gone through Rycroft's mind that he wouldn't be known to the Met Police, and he may have felt it gave him a form of anonymity. And then the chances of actually being interrupted, the chance of somebody else coming on the scene, he would not want that to happen, and he certainly wouldn't want to go back to prison.
I just don't know why they went to London. I don't know. I can only think that Gareth went in search of this money that was owed to him, because he just wanted to straighten things out. And I think there was no intention of staying in London because he had nothing with him.
There is such a tragic irony that whilst Gareth leaves for London believing that he is going to ensure that people who are owed money are indeed paid, that his partner, Rycroft, is simply intending to take him to his death.
At 9:40, the couple check into the hotel. It's the last time anyone will see Gareth alive. The next morning, Gareth's parents receive a devastating call.
Charlie said, "I've got something to tell you."
I said that the police had phoned and, Gareth had passed away.
Charlie spoke to the police in London.
I said, there's more to this than meets the eye. I said, because the police are coming all the way up from London to see us. Then he told us.
To say that Gareth had been murdered and had been hit over the head with a fire extinguisher while he was asleep.
For Gareth's parents, finding out that Gareth had in fact been murdered is something that would have ripped their worlds apart. No parent should ever hear the words that their child has died, but to hear that your child has been brutally murdered is something that for any parent is more terrifying than beyond measure.
I just feel as though it's not happening, like it's in a book or a film or something, and somebody's going to come along and say, it's not real. And you think like that for a long time, and it's not going to be, it's not real.
Police now have a murder investigation on their hands. They begin to build a picture of what happened. Gareth was killed after being hit several times over the head with a fire extinguisher. Rycroft was the last person to be with Gareth. He is the prime suspect.
It was very much a functional kill, using the fire extinguisher, what was there, so not taking a weapon to the hotel, not using a knife, because that's a lot more up close and personal and quite wet work. He uses something that's functional in the room, blunt force trauma to the head. And he's much more about scamming and defrauding people, taking money from them. And yes, he's manipulative, he's deceptive, he's unscrupulous, and he's a liar, he's a con artist. But these things that he's doing are very much functional to ensure that he doesn't go back to prison. That's his primary aim here.
Rycroft is arrested, but his lies would continue. He tells the police he left Gareth with a rent boy, and it's him who the police need to find. The question is, would Rycroft be able to get away with murder?
The more we thought about it, then the more we came to the conclusion was that he was capable of doing it.
September 2007. The Metropolitan Police are investigating a murder. Gareth MacDonald has been battered to death in a hotel room. His parents are devastated.
He'd been hit over the head with a fire extinguisher while he was asleep. You just feel as though it's not happening. Somebody's going to come along and say, it's not real. And you think like that for a long time.
Gareth was killed by his boyfriend, Glenn Rycroft, a serial conman who's been bleeding Gareth's accounts dry. A murder to stop Gareth going to the police.
During the actual attack, he strikes him a number of times with the fire extinguisher. So this wasn't just about injuring someone, this was actually about killing someone. And these behavioural clues tell us that this was very much a premeditated attack.
Rycroft is arrested by the police. But he's been conning people for years, and the lies won't stop now. He tells the police he was nowhere near the hotel at the time of the murder. He'd left Gareth with a rent boy.
Rycroft suggesting that Gareth has been murdered by a rent boy is so disrespectful, because it means that people would perceive Gareth in quite a negative way, that this man has been using prostitutes to deal with his sexual needs. And that adds further emphasis to how little Rycroft cares about Gareth's character.
But at the scene, forensic officers are uncovering evidence that would prove Rycroft is lying.
So Rycroft had certainly done his research, but he didn't go through the intricacies of what might happen in terms of the crime scene, and that would be what ultimately tripped him up. How he was caught was through forensics. So when he attacked Gareth using the fire extinguisher, there were fingerprints left on that particular object that matched to Rycroft. And certainly the blood spatter from the blunt force trauma of the attack spattered onto his shoes. And again, that very much implicated him in this murder.
But detectives wouldn't just use science to prove Rycroft's guilt. They would also look carefully into Rycroft and Gareth's relationship.
And the victimology would have been key here. So who is Gareth? And they would have worked out why he was in the hotel, who he was with, the fact that he had a short whirlwind relationship with Rycroft, the fact that Rycroft and he had travelled to London and he was the last person to be seen with Gareth, and he was the person that reported finding him too. Everything led back to Rycroft.
Police believe they have a strong case. Rycroft is charged with murder. Gareth's parents are told the man they welcomed into their family home is a suspected killer.
After they'd gone, you know, we started sort of looking at previous things that had gone on, whether it was related to money or lies or whatever. You know, the more we thought about it, then the more we came to the conclusion was that he was capable of doing it.
Gareth wasn't streetwise, he was too trusting, and as a parent, that's where you think maybe I failed him, that I didn't arm him with the knowledge that he needed. Because he'd be so trusting, Gareth.
For Gareth's parents, Rycroft wasn't a simple murderer. He was an individual who'd been invited into their homes, into the lives of Gareth's children, and he was accepted fundamentally as a part of all of their lives. For Gareth's parents to know that they had invited a murderer into their home, into their lives, must be impossible to bear.
Gareth is laid to rest on the 13th of December 2007. Sue and Charlie received dozens of messages from well-wishers in the community.
The number of cards we had, and we got school teachers from school sent cards. Dinner lady. So many. The church was full. It makes you realise how much loved he was and how popular. He had a white coffin. Gareth wouldn't have wanted just a plain wooden coffin. It'd have to be something different. So he had a white coffin.
June 2009. Rycroft goes on trial for murder at the Old Bailey in London.
We went as a family and we stayed down in London, and I had to tell them to make sure they behaved respectable. Made me proud.
You can't say anything to him and you can't do anything to him, can you? So he was just behind a glass screen, not very far away from us.
I couldn't look at him, I didn't want to look at him. He was in the court and I wouldn't make contact. Didn't want to see him at all. Don't particularly want to see him ever again.
He didn't look as though he was remorse, or I think he might have even convinced himself that he hadn't done it. That was the sort of impression he was giving. But of course it was proven beyond doubt, really, that he had done it. And that's why he got the sentence he got.
On the 3rd of July, Rycroft is found guilty of murder.
We were out for a good few hours, and then when you go back in and they said it was guilty, it's just that's so much of a relief. And then the judge sentenced him to 25 years.
I did offer the liaison officer at the time. I said, go and tell him I'll swap him his 25 years for 25 minutes locked in a room with me.
Glenn Rycroft's character is clearly one of a devious, deep, selfish character who knows no bounds and will do anything to cover up his crimes, get what he wants, and learn nothing from his mistakes at all.
Do you want to take a bit of water?
There's quite a few things around, you know, that keeps reminding us of Gareth. There's lots of photographs of him, even the girls. The youngest one, she's a spitting image of him. When she comes on a Sunday, he's here as well, I think.
Sue and Charlie are determined that Gareth's children do not forget their dad.
The girls come every week, every Sunday. Or they'll stay over. They've all got a memory box each, which has got all sorts in, like aftershaves and his watches and his badges from where he worked and drawings he's done and cards. Got photographs and things. It's just things of Gareth. One of his daughters was really missing him and had a Gareth t-shirt here and she wore it for bed. She said she could smell him on it. But she just felt it was his. Keep busy and carry on and remember the good times. It's off his grave.
Yeah, off his grave, from the kids.
It doesn't get any easier, you just learn to cope differently with it. Gareth would say life's for living, and that's what he did. He lived life to the full. He enjoyed life, he loved people.